Hey, welcome back to another episode of the Mindshare Podcast. This show is sponsored by Kit's Keep in Touch Systems, a two-time international award-winning marketing suite for sales professionals, as well as REM Real Estate Magazine, Canada's premier monthly magazine for real estate professionals. Learn more about our sponsors by visiting my site, mindshare101.com. And while you're there, be sure to download your free copy of my book, The Ultimate Marketing Bundle, as well as learn more about our one-to-one coaching. Also, when you get there, you're going to see a pop-up about our upcoming Mindshare Mastermind here in Toronto. A lot of people have been asking me about the agenda. For those of you coming, you'll find out soon enough. For those of you not coming, well, it really doesn't matter. But for those of you on the fence, here's something I want you to think about. When it comes to connecting with new people, better yet, connecting with people who have a lot of money, such as athletes and celebrities, to have them as your clients. Do you think you could learn a thing or two from a guy who has interviewed Shaq and many other seriously high-profile people? We're hosting a two-day Mindshare Mastermind here in Toronto on May 29th and 30th. We'll be going from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. on 2 days with an awesome night out on day one. Be sure to get yourself registered. Our hotel room block ends at the end of this week, and event registration closes shortly as well. Don't wait any longer. Now is your time. Today's episode is number 229. He's an introverted, extroverted professional who says he discovered the secret to success, and that is good communication skills. In order to overcome his social anxiety, he intentionally pursued positions where people naturally came to him for help. With every job, he sought to improve his social skills through learning tips and tricks to interact with others effectively. As his communication abilities grew, so did his career. Each new social skill he acquired brought him another promotion, leading him to become a corporate trainer, move into sales, and even be flown around the U.S. to present to high-profile clients worth over $1 million. Eventually, he was promoted to esteemed position of Regional Vice President of Sales and began speaking on stages alongside renowned industry leaders such as Brad Lee, Steve Sims, Greg Reed, and Alex Hormozi, and many more. But what was that one skill that changed everything for him? The ability to decode facial features. By learning how to interpret the subtle signals that people's faces give off, he was able to better understand and communicate with others, which in turn helped him succeed professionally and personally. Joining me on this episode of the Mindshare Podcast is facial recognition expert Brian Galke. Brian, welcome to the Mindshare Podcast.
Thank you. Episode 229. That's impressive.
Dude. You know, it's funny. I'll tell you a quick story on that, which I probably didn't share with you when we first met. But a buddy of mine years ago had come to me and he said to me, you know, we were doing a lot of stuff together and he had me down at events and was doing a ton of video. He calls me up. He's like, dude, you got to start a podcast. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, man, I don't know that I got time to start a podcast. And quite frankly, I don't even know where to start the podcast. He said, no, you got to start it. We're putting something really big together. You got to be part of it. Do it. I'm like, all right. I'm thinking about this. And he goes, there's just one catch. I'm like, oh, there it is, right? He's like, I need you to have 3 episodes ready in the next 7 days.
Oh.
Dude, I came away from that. I'm like, yeah, I got this. Mm-hmm. Ended the Zoom meeting. I'm like, looking up at the sky, like, what do I do? Thank God for Google, right. YouTube. And here we are, I don't know, 5 years later, man. And we haven't stopped. It's been a weekly thing ever since. And it's been going well. It's a lot of fun. But we get awesome people like yourself that make some time to join us, for our audience, and be able to teach. So it's a very cool thing. I get to learn a lot as well.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome.
The best part, right? That's the whole reason we do it, is because we're in search of knowledge and then we get to share it with other people. It's the ultimate win-win.
You know, it's funny that it's interesting the way we say that, right? Because it's like so often, so much of what we do, and I was just having this conversation with somebody within the past literally 60 minutes and talking about the fact that like there are people out there that want to better themselves. Mm-hmm. That believe in themselves. And there's a lot of people out there that either A, don't think about being better, or B, completely don't believe in themselves. And so they don't take the steps to do so.
Right.
And I think for any of us that actually take the time to go and learn and to do some digging and to do some research and reading books and watching podcasts, listening to podcasts, you know, whatever, you learn so much.
Oh my God, yes.
And then it's like, I can't turn it off now. I need more. You know what I mean? You see, you get addicted to like the learning, and it's changed everything in my world.
There was a marketing book I read years ago, and the term for that's constantly questing, because you're constantly searching to learn more, to do more, be more. And it's ironic. You said you were just talking about this with somebody. I was on Clubhouse earlier today, which I very rarely get on anymore, but I get on for one particular podcast or one particular room on Wednesdays. And we were talking about most people being raised by a school that was really taught us to be in the, oh gosh, I just drew blank on it. To work in factories and training, right? So if you think about modern school, we are taught to do a job. And so a majority of the people are happy with that 3 to 5% increase and a cool title, because we were raised to think in terms of the industrial age. That was the word I was looking for, versus what can you do as an individual? And entrepreneur used to be a bad thing. It used to be a dirty name, like, oh, that's somebody who's either selling MLM or can't get a job, versus now it's a badge of honor. Because so many people have figured that it's completely fine if you're happy working in corporate. I did it for 21 and a half years. But if you're not wired to stay there, it's okay to leave, or it's okay to do more. And, because I met you through the speakeasy and like-minded people, whenever I would spend money to go to something like that, people go, is your company paying for it? I said, no. Well, why would you do it then? I said, because I want to keep growing. It's not always about being better at your job. It's about being better at life. And if you can go, just like picking up any book, if you can take one nugget away, it's worth the cost of admission. So
listen, man, I mean, okay, so you bring up the speakeasy, and you obviously, just heard me make the announcement about our mindshare happening in Toronto. So you would fully understand what's going down. Right. And it's funny because we got a lot of people that are like, well, what's the agenda? Like who's going to be there? Who's speaking? Right. And I'm sitting there and again, taking a page out of what I've learned now through firsthand experience, which again, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
Don't worry about it. Just come. Right. And you sit there and you doubt it. And I certainly, even for myself, had the same type of thoughts and doubts. And I don't know who's going to be there and who am I going to meet? Who am I going to talk to?
Exactly.
Then all of a sudden you do it and you're like, all right, when's the next one? So many people need to jump on that. And I think to what you said about like the industrialized way of thinking, I think, I would kind of coin that term as well as like institutionalized way of thinking, because we're brought up in a way through education of like, this is kind of the stepping stones you take in life. And that's kind of how you get to where you're supposed to go. And I think that as we learn more and educate ourselves, and society's changed, you realize that step-by-step is not necessarily the right step-by-step for everybody.
Right.
And so that whole idea of, again, that, forgive me, what did you call it? On the quest?
Constantly questing. Yes.
Constantly questing. That's where you actually learn, what is my path? And I think that one thing I've been learning, I got no clue what my path is. Like, I know where I want to go. I know what I want. Yes. But every day, sort of like throws like new adventures and new opportunities and new challenges. And that kind of maybe, takes you off course by like a little, degree, but maybe it puts you better on course by that degree as well. So you don't know. And that's why you got to try.
So my other LLC besides this one is What Schools Don't Teach. And it's not meant to be a knock on institutional education, but a majority of the things I've learned in life that have gotten me further in life is not what I learned in school. It's what I learned outside of school.
That's right. That's right. It's so much about that, man. And that's why I say, again, it's funny. Like, and I know you chuckled at that because you're like, don't worry about the agenda. Don't worry about the speakers. Don't worry about whatever. That's a lot of the things that people are wondering about, when it comes to the mindshare in Toronto. And, we're just trying to let people know, like, you want to be there. Right.
Well, and I laughed because I went to an event in Vegas last week and they gave the agenda. And one of the days I decided an hour's sleep would have been better than who I thought was going to be speaking. And you know what? They were running a little bit behind. So when I got there, I realized how wrong I was, because that person actually provided a ton of value that I was not expecting. And that's why I really enjoy the idea of not knowing. Just tell me when to be there and when I'm going home, because then I don't let myself off the hook. You're paying the money to go. You're paying for the travel, the hotel, get to bed an hour earlier or take a nap at lunch, whatever you need to do. But don't shortchange your experience because you think, I won't get something from this speaker. And I say that from firsthand experience. Lucky for me, they were running behind because I got a ton of value out of that speaker that I wasn't expecting.
That is so awesome. And that's exactly what it is, right? It's like when you've got no predetermined notion of anything, you don't know who's coming up next, what you're going to learn. You sort of sit there like, just again, like we both did in that room, just tapping away to notes, like, oh my God, like give me more. Like I want to learn
exactly.
more.
Well, then you start looking around the room, and this is a side effect. Because you don't know who's speaking, you don't know who you're sitting next to. And so you start talking to people. And regardless of whether or not they're going to be a speaker, you get to realize there's some badass people out there in the world that are doing things that you're not aware of that you can learn from. But you don't know that when you go to a huge event that's 5,000 people and you just sit a butt in a seat versus when you get to these more intimate experiences where you get to interact and you spend time together. I really believe that's the future of the industry versus huge stadiums.
Yeah. Oh man, I thought that was so cool because I was like, wait a second, who are you? What do you do? Like, I just spent 3 hours talking to you about God knows what.
Right.
And I thought what was so cool about that was there was no, I don't know if pretentious is the word, but there was no, I don't know who you are. So we're just going to connect as human beings, have a good conversation. All of a sudden you're like, wow, you got this wealth of knowledge in this like one area of, business of life. And I want to soak this in because like, I actually got to spend time with you just talking. You're a good person.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, buddy, well, this is what I want to jump in with you. So tell me this, like, I'm going to go right for this one first, because when I read it from the bio and then I thought back to actually some of the conversation that was had in Dallas, what does it mean to be an introverted extrovert?
Sure. I love to go and be around people, but I was terrified of being around people at the exact same time. So when I say this, it's going to sound like a pity party, but when you're out in public and you feel like you're in prison, it sucks, because I like and I enjoy being around people, but I was always in my own head and I was so focused on me that it was ridiculous. And so I felt like I was there, but I never belonged. And then when I learned the skill we're going to talk about today and I learned to start focusing on other people, it took me out of the prison of my own mind and into the present moment. And that's what changed my life the most was I got out of my own way. And there's still, if I go to events and I don't know people, my natural instinct is to go sit in the corner where I can observe everywhere before I start talking to people. So if you see me in an event and I'm not talking to people, it's because I'm pushing myself because I love people. But I used to be terrified of what people were thinking of me. But when I learned to focus on them, it changed everything.
You see, that's an interesting one, right? And I think that even if we tie that back to like active listening skills around like actually listening to what you're saying, not just sitting there nodding the head or saying yes.
Right.
This is where we get to go, wait a second. Now I've really dissected something you actually said and I can almost ask that back or continue the conversation.
Yes.
And it's a natural continuation, which actually creates flow of conversation.
Yes. If you've read Never Split the Difference by Chris
I actually Chris has actually been on the show.
Oh, God. Okay. Yeah. I'm jealous now. Yeah. But so he talks about, parroting back their words. And if you actively listen, and they say, I've had a hard day. You say, oh, had a hard day. And then they can expand. And what it shows is I am listening to you versus our normal ADD, smartwatches, smartphones, everything else, that we've lost the ability to really have good face-to-face conversations and pay attention.
Truly. And I think that thing that he called, you said parroting, and I think I picked it up as mirroring. The same idea is picking up on a few words that somebody just shared and feeding those back with almost a question mark at the end. Yes, it shows them that there's good conversation happening, right? So like we've got a lot of salespeople who they fear, I wouldn't even say the art of communicating, like they just fear communicating with others or maybe just don't know how to properly communicate with other people. For example, somebody who's more assertive versus somebody who might be just, naturally more timid. Why are good communication skills so crucial? And I mean, I think maybe that kind of goes without saying, but Brian, could anybody learn how to be better at this? Or is this just a natural born skill? You either got it or you don't.
Oh, I think anybody can learn it. That's so like I mentioned before, being an introvert, the way I learned to understand people better is I picked up books on body language. I picked up books on NLP, how to win friends and influence people. Because what introverts do, they study. And what's interesting is, can anybody learn it? Yes. Can anybody teach it? No. And that's why the old sports phrase, some of the best players make the worst coaches, because if it comes inherent to the player, they don't know how to break it down and teach it to somebody else. And I think it's the people who struggle are the people who can teach it because they had to learn it. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yeah, it does. It does. It does. Whereas the people that are like born skilled, they're like, I don't know, I just do it.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes. They can't break it down to reverse engineer it to teach it to other people.
So then when we look at your situation, kind of go, that whole idea of going in a room, doing the analyzing, maybe being more introverted to begin with. And I think and again, that was something that was probably a light bulb moment for me in Dallas, especially too, was because I sit there and for what we do here, we're obviously very extroverted in the sense where we've got a podcast and we get on stages and we talk to lots of people on a regular basis. Yet there are moments in a day where it's like, I want to be by myself. I don't even want to talk. And it's like somebody calls you to just like shoot the shit. And you're like, dude, I've been on the phone all day talking. I don't even want to be there. But when we think about communication, how did you then get yourself to that point where, that starting point where you even realized, one, you needed to spend time learning to do this? Because again, there's going to be some people that think they got it. Mm-hmm. And maybe they don't, right?
Yes.
How do you realize that it's time to do that? And how did you muster up the nerve to kind of say to yourself, you know what, even though I feel more comfortable maybe sitting in that room doing the analyzing a little bit more quiet, I need to figure this part out?
Mine was a bit of FOMO because I do love people and I was tired of feeling alone in a public place. That was the driving force for me. I always felt like I missed that day at school where they talked about like, how do you make friends? I've always had friends, but I didn't always feel like I belonged. The funny thing is if you didn't know that I'm an introvert, you would assume I'm 100% an extrovert because I would join things like adult kickball changed my life. We can go into that story, a whole other thing, but
adult kickball
changed my life here in Dallas. Moved out here. I had a roommate.
I've never even heard of kickball. Is that like soccer?
Well, it's like it's a combination of the little red rubber ball, and then it's built like a baseball diamond. Yes, like a dodgeball, but you play almost baseball with it, and you kick it.
Okay.
And so I joined a co-ed kickball league out here, and that also helped get me on my shell. But people would assume because I was always out that I'm just this super extrovert, and I do love people, but I was still terrified at the exact same time.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So this is in first, I would say to anybody that is looking to expand their network, think about exactly that. Get involved in things that you enjoy. And oftentimes we can look and say, well, how's that going to help? Or what do I do? Don't go there trying to sell anything. Just go there and be a real person. Take part in something you enjoy that other people enjoy. Find the commonalities together. And in time, things happen, right? Things happen.
I'll take that a step further. Go join any group of people that's doing something you're partially interested in, because people worry about, oh, well, I'm not the best at this. So what? Everybody starts somewhere. But if there's something that you've always been curious to do, my answer is go, because you can always leave. Right. And so I've done that all the time. If I get invited to something, even if I'm thinking, I don't know, I'll go because I can always leave, because you never know where you meant to be there for some reason. And it's the same thing. If somebody moves somewhere near, I encourage them, join all the meetup groups. Go find anything that you've always been interested in that you've been holding yourself back from, because you may meet some really cool people and you may find a new hobby at the exact same time.
But I like that. It's that you've got permission to go, but you've also got permission to leave if it's not the right place.
Exactly.
So what's the harm, right? And there comes back to that step, to like as we open the show today. Are you going to take that step to try to better yourself?
Right.
It may not always work out,
mm-hmm.
but I can promise you this: if you don't try, it ain't going to work out.
That's exactly
it. If you try, you never know.
Yep.
So as we talk about that, then, and we look at these skills, and again, coming from the bio there, how would you define a social skill?
A social skill is anything that you can use in a social environment to help understand people better. So it could be expanding your vocabulary. It could be active listening. It could be learning to read body language. It could be paying attention to the environment so you can ask people questions. So anything that can enhance rapport building skills with other people, to me, that's a social skill.
Okay. And then as we talked about, you found a particular skill for yourself that you mastered.
Yes.
What was it?
So in Fluke Chance, in 2010, a friend was coming down and she said, hey, do you want to go to dinner? I said, yes. I showed up to dinner. She called and said, I'm not going to make it. I said, oh, here we go. And she's like, no, you need to come to the event that I was at. I'm like, why do I need to come over there? She said, because this guy can decode facial features. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm going to rush over there for that one. And I went over there with all intentions of blowing holes in this guy, right? He was the keynote speaker for their event, and she was blown away. You have to meet him. You have to meet him. And when I went over there, I thought this guy's going to say generic things like, you've had a hard time in life, or, just something you could either read in a horoscope, or it's so generic it applies to everyone. But instead, he sat down at the dinner table and dissected everyone, but tactically. And he chose different facial features and said, this means this, this means this. And what he did is he showed us a book, and then he showed us flashcards, right, of what the different features mean. So the cool thing that I saw was this wasn't cold reading, which is you just say something, you wait for someone to nod, but he could tactically understand someone based on solely their facial features. And so really, what are our faces? They're a map of where we've been and where we are currently. And that's because there's 42 muscles in the face. The mind creates movement, movement creates muscle. So our faces change over time. And so literally, when you're talking to someone, you are looking at who they are currently and trying to understand, how do I understand them and how do I speak their language? And when I saw him do this, it was November 13th of 2010, because I found the email the other day. Yeah. I immediately bought his material. And then I live in Dallas, and I would drive 45 minutes to Fort Worth twice a month when he would hold classes to learn more and then learn more. And I got certified in 2012, and it skyrocketed my career from being on the help desk to being regional vice president of sales, all by focusing on other people. So now that was just one of the skills. I had to learn our product inside and out as well. Sure. But for any customer over $1 million, me and two other people were flown across the US to give presentations for the account managers, because we knew people and we knew the product. But the crazy thing is, before that, when I was doing presentations, I knew my PowerPoint, I knew the product, and then I knew like my projector. But people were always the unknown.
Yeah, and you just said my, and all three of those. Yeah, I got you there. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But when you walk in, if you don't know who the people are that you're going to meet, and we gave presentations to blind evaluation committees, so we couldn't research who was going to be in the room. Now, we had an idea at times, but as soon as we walked in, I would just start figuring out these different facial features about them. And when I was speaking their language, I'd look at them, and sometimes I'd even point at them. And that would basically let them know, hey, I'm speaking your language. I know what you're looking for. And I know it sounds kind of generic now, but you can tactically break down people based on their eyebrows, based on their eye angles, eyelids, their ears, their nose, their nostrils, their lips, their chin, their jaw. Everything tells you a little bit about someone. And people ask all the time, is it 100%? No. Is it high 90s? Yes. How do I know it? A decade of using it. And not only do I speak on stage, I just spoke with Brad Lee in front of 500 people on Saturday at their Closer School Live event. And then if you go to my social media, then people afterwards surround me, 20, 30 people at a time. And I'm breaking down faces one at a time. And so if it was wrong, people would just call me out right then or there. And then people say, well, are you gaslighting or cold reading someone? Because there is no bad facial feature. There's just what you have, because it's not about judgment. It's about understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to say, because like you had put a post up about like very specific. It was like how to understand someone in less than 30 seconds.
Correct.
And I look at that from a business perspective, a sales perspective, a relationship perspective, and go, wow, think about the power, the impact that would have if like you just said, because look, walk into a room of people you don't know. It could be a coffee shop. It could be a seminar, whatever.
Yes.
Right. And again, it's that introvert almost where you're like, oh, I don't know who's there. I don't know what's going on. If I want to talk to anybody. And all of a sudden you start, based on this skill set you're talking about here that you've mastered, being able to almost even find your people.
Yes.
And be like, I know I could probably communicate with that person. That person might be a little bit more difficult to communicate with.
Correct.
Let's take that a step further now. You're getting on a plane, being flown around to these high net worth individuals. Why is it so impactful to have Brian as part of that based on this skill set when it comes to, let's say, closing deals?
So I knew how to present the product. And that's the thing. Everybody's got a product. But what I wasn't making it was about me. I knew what I wanted to say, but really I was focusing on them to figure out, how do I speak their language so they best understand it? And the very, very basic, simple example I like to give are there's 3 basic eyebrow shapes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So there's straight eyebrows is get straight to the point. Facts, figures, data, and stop talking. There's angled eyebrows. Like I actually have an angled eyebrow right here. Angled eyebrow is what's my angle? Help me understand it first, and then tell me about how other people will benefit from it. And then third, there's a rounded eyebrow. Well, rounded eyebrow people think about the people around them. If you just do just those three things, what happens is you start thinking, how do I present it? So if I see a straight eyebrow, I need to hurry up and get straight to the point as soon as possible. If I see the angled eyebrow, I talk about, Mr. Customer, this is how, once you understand it, then you can help your customers, your clients, your loved ones, because they need to understand it and be included in the process. Or if they've got rounded eyebrows, I talk about how everybody else benefits first and then them, because they think of other people first. And the reason I teach eyebrows is because eyebrows lead to eye contact. In this day and age, people have lost the ability to have a face-to-face communication with people. And what happens is when you
what do you mean? Because people are always doing this?
Yeah, exactly. Look, I know myself well enough. I cannot get a smartwatch. I think they're amazing. I know for health reasons and everything else, but I know I would be, sure, right. You can.
Yeah.
I have a buddy who I was just talking to him the other day. He had to disable every notification on his watch. And I'm like, well, then why do you have a smartwatch? So that's what we've become is here's a simple example. Why do we all look at our own face to make sure we're staring at the camera when we're on Zoom calls? Because we value eye contact. And right. The worst thing is if I'm looking down here to look at you versus up here to where my camera is, if I talked like this the entire time, people would stop watching. Right. Instead, I have to look at where my camera is for people to pay attention.
Which is an interesting one, because as I'm doing that and I'm looking at my lens as well, so that we're making eye contact.
Yes.
We're not actually making eye contact.
Correct.
Which is the interesting part about this digital thing. Sorry, keep going on that, because I'm totally with you on that.
So it drives me nuts. There's some people who do the entire Zoom call like this because the laptop's here. And I'm like, yo, I'm over here.
Best practices 101.
Exactly. A very simple technique. My friend Joe Ingram, he puts a Post-it note right above the camera. So like right here where my lens is.
Here.
It says, look here. And that's the entire reason why he does it, is because he wants to make sure he's looking at where he needs to so people feel seen. You met Brian Bogart. So I had the luxury of going right after Brian at a private speakeasy in Phoenix that we did. And it was at a house. And Brian talked about the 4 human needs: physical safety. People want to feel seen. People want to feel heard. And people want to feel understood. Well, I can't help you with the physical safety, but feeling seen, heard, and understood is exactly what happens when you learn to decode people's facial features. Because what you're doing is, I know what I want to say, but when I focus on you, it's felt. And especially body language is great. As a matter of fact, right here is Janine Driver's book on body language. I have a whole shelf full of body language books. But body language, again, I'm looking down. If I'm analyzing faces, I'm looking at you here.
Right.
And it's very often that I do what's called paid practice, and that is companies will bring me in not to teach it, but just to break down people's facial features at events. And so they'll give me a table that, people come over, and it's kind of like a entertainment / learn about yourself environment. And I'll do that all the time. And you would not believe 1 in 10 people will cry. And that's because it's the first time that they feel seen and heard, sometimes for the first time in a very, very long time.
Wow.
And at that very speakeasy, there was a girl came up. She had rounded eyebrows. She had no upper lip, which means you don't talk about yourself. And if you say, well, how does it mean that? We all talk about facial features in our daily language. So if I say, hey, keep a stiff upper lip, what does that mean? Don't share your emotions, right? Like, hey, suck it up. Well, so if you have rounded eyebrows, we already talked about, those are people who think about the people around them. And then you see a flatter upper lip. Well, they don't talk about what they do, but then she had this little line right here, which is called a verbal affirmation line. I know I'm giving you a lot, but
no, I was going to ask you that, because I mean, and I remember when you did this with me when we first met, and I'm like, what? You're like, watch.
Yes.
And I was like, oh man, you're scary, right?
It is.
but seriously speaking though, like, and we didn't get We didn't get to dive into the depths of it all, like the extent, but I remember you talked about the eyebrows.
Yes.
You mentioned a few other things, and I was about to ask you here, like, what are some of those other things? If I'm this person who's tuned in right now going, this is blowing my mind.
Right.
Eyebrows I got.
Yes.
You just mentioned about the lips.
Right. So if you see someone with a flatter upper lip, we say the phrase, keep a stiff upper lip means don't share your emotions.
Okay.
So if you see somebody with a flatter upper lip, if you ask them too many personal questions right away, the wall will come up because they think you don't deserve to know that about me. However, I won't ask them. I'll ask them work-related things until they share a personal story. Then I know it's game on. When I talked about, it's crazy. Matter of fact,
so like, give me the opposite to like this, like the would you say like no upper lip or like?
Sure. So I'll give you the best polar opposite there is. Yep. What's the number one plastic surgery being done right now?
Lips.
Why?
People want to, all puckered up and stuff.
Nobody knows, but that's because this is considered our personal lip. This is considered our professional lip. And people ask, what's it based on? Right brain versus left brain. There's 42 muscles in the face. But when there's a fuller upper lip, people are more approachable. That's why if you think about lipstick, what are they meant to do? To highlight lips. Why? Because it makes us more approachable. So the number one piece of advice I give to any guy with a beard is if you see here, I trim so that you can see my upper lip.
Yeah.
And that's actually how I met Steve. Is he was on a podcast with my friend Joe. And I analyzed his face and I said, hey, Steve, if you want to be more approachable by people, trim that up so people know and they can see your upper lip. And he's like, do you think I care?
I was about to say, what was Steve's response to that?
Yeah. Well, anybody who knows Steve is
he goes, I got to grow it longer than.
Yeah. He's a rock star on stage, but he's an introvert. He gets off stage and he'll go hide in the corner.
Yeah.
And a lot of speakers are that way. And that's because if you are an introverted speaker, you get up with purpose and you have a job to do. And then when you're done delivering it, you revert back to who you are. Now, there's some people who are just stage whores and they love to be up there, but you can tell who's up there to deliver a message because they're not really talking about themselves. They're making sure they give content to the customers versus an ego bump for themselves.
Right. That's crucial.
To answer your question, so to give people just a few examples.
Yeah. And I got some scenarios I'm going to ask you about to see if I can work these angles. Okay. So
absolutely.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, so I know we didn't plan to do this, but do you want to see some picture examples?
Sure.
Okay. Give me one.
I got scared. I'm like, this guy's going to read my face on my show right person, now. It's going to be really, no, I'm joking. I got no fear about it.
I'm going to go through a lot of these slides really fast, but for your visual, audience, I just want to be able for them to see it.
Totally. Can you share screen there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool.
All right. So there, share screen. All right. So there you go. All right. So when I talk about what faces tell us, there are so many phrases about faces all the time. Got an eye for this, got an ear for this, keep a stiff upper lip, keep your nose to the grindstone, take one on the chin. Those are all phrases that are part of our everyday language.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is authors and artists used to take courses on how to describe characters in a book or how to draw them. And so if you think about it, in books that we all had to read growing up, the only way to describe characters in a book was through their actions and through their facial features. And so we've all been trained our entire life on what does a hero look like? What does a villain look like? They literally took courses all the way back to Edgar Allan Poe, took courses in something known as physiognomy. So what is physiognomy is it's the art of discovering people based on who they are, based on their facial features. And so like I talked about earlier, there's 42 muscles in the face. And what happens is they change over time and people go, what do you mean change over time? This is a picture of me at 18 versus 38. Mm-hmm. Look at all the differences. So I used to have a straight eyebrow here.
Oh, the eyebrow. Wow.
Yeah. Now
here's major difference. And by the way, just for everybody that's listening into the audio of today's show, we are on a live stream right now. We do have visual going on. So you got to be joining us live. You should do that. But I'm glad that you're listening. So thank you. But seriously, Brian's showing us right now. He's got some visuals on the screen just to help, explain what he's talking about.
At the picture of me at 18, what I had is a very straight eyebrow. And the picture of me at 38 is angled.
That's wild, man.
Yeah. When I became a corporate trainer, I had to learn it. What does an angled eyebrow mean? What's my angle? Help me understand it so I can help others. And so that is when that came into play. The one that most people notice is look at how my ears used to stick out on my 18. They were farther away from my head. Ears are like wind drag on a plane. The more that they stick out, the more you push back on other people and how they do it. And you want to do things on your own. The closer they get to the head, the more you go with the flow. So look at my ears as I became older. Right here, they're closer to my head than they were when I was 18. Now, the biggest one that you won't realize until I tell it to you here is look at the picture of me at 18. So on the left here, look at how both eyes angle down quite a bit. Okay. Yeah. Now look on the right on when I'm 38. So the eye right here, it's even. This one angles up. Yeah. What that is I was raised in a very loving household, but they were always like, hey, go try your best, but do you have a backup plan? So they were always worried about the downside of things. So if you see somebody's eyes who angle down, going from the inside of the eye by the nose to the outer region, which way does it point? Does it angle up? Is it even, or does it angle down? And so this one I would use when going to do presentations. We did this to correctional officials. That's who I sold technology to. Wow. And so I could go into a room, and if somebody's eyes angled up, then I knew they want to hear about the upside of things. So I'd talk about the features, the benefits. If they're angled down, then they were worried about the downside. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And so you want to pause here and give me scenario questions? Or
okay. So yeah. I mean, like, and I've got a bunch of them because I went to left field with these things. Okay. Sure. And I started just kind of like, so what about, right? So I'm going to go through some of them and just see if anything's applicable right now. But one of them I wrote down was like, how would I know if a potential client is actually interested in what I'm saying or just can't wait for me to shut up so they can go work with somebody else?
Sure. So there's several. This one's not so much about facial features, but it's more about how do they respond, body language, micro expressions. Number one is, do they lean in? Are they nodding? Yes. But one that is related to faces is your lower lid. So we've been taught through body language, don't cross our arms. Yep. Don't stick your hands in your pockets. However, people's lower eyelid will reveal if it's rounded, then they're open to hearing what you're saying. However, if it goes flat, you've just flatlined. So something you said or did has upset them. And what do we do as kids when there's something we don't like? We cover our eyes.
Okay, so hold on. Say it again. I'm sitting there. I'm doing a sales presentation. I think I'm giving you a feature and a benefit.
Right.
And what am I watching for in your eyes?
You're watching for this lower lid right here.
Yeah.
Is it rounded? If so, they're open to hearing what you say.
Okay.
If it goes straight, they're shutting you out.
So, and that's going to happen almost in the moment.
It is. That's a reactive skill. So if you think about it, is if you've ever had anybody take a rubber band and point it at your eye, what do we instantly do? We wince, right?
Right.
To protect our eyes. That's how we protect ourselves, is we start to close down to focus on what we need to be safe. And so if somebody's eyes are rounded and they suddenly flatten, that's literally somebody trying to shut you out.
Got it. So that's what you're watching for.
Yes.
Right. Because it's like, and again, a lot of our audience obviously sits at a sales table across from people. So they're sitting there at the sales table, and now it's like, well, what am I watching for to see if they actually care about what I'm saying?
Yes.
Or it's like, I'm trying to, like I speak about a realtor. They're going for a listing presentation. Well, it might be somebody else that they're competing against as well. They don't know that. The person's not in the room at the same time as them, but it's now you can read the potential seller and almost go, are these people probably going to sign with me or probably going to say, thank you, see you later?
So I'm actually going to show you a visual picture. So I'm trying to find another one real fast.
Okay.
I want to show this to you because when you can see what it looks like when somebody is smiling, but their eyes go flat, you're going to be amazed. So I'm just finding another picture because we were just going to have the conversation. So for people listening, this is kind of a on the spur of the moment.
Yeah. It's cool. I love this.
Yeah. But I like it because I'm a visual learner. And so I like to teach to other people as well. So let me just find the picture I want.
That's cool. It's all the reason why people should tune in live with us as well. But again, I don't want to take away from the fact that you guys listen regularly while you're jogging, doing all your other stuff. And I thank you guys.
And I'm guilty of the exact same thing, right? Like I do things on the fly when I'm moving. So let me grab this here.
Wow. I'll tell you, as you're doing that, that's the double down right there. And that's part of it is that I'll go to the gym. And while I'm at the gym, most people are either, schmoozing, in between their sets or they are listening to some of their favorite tunes, I'm actually reading my book. And the reality is I'm reading my book and I'm working out my body. I am taking care of self right then and there in that moment, you know? All right, let's do this.
All right. So here's a good example.
Yeah.
If you see the picture in the top, and so for those listening, her lower eyelids are rounded off. Right. And so she's opening. She likes what she's hearing. She wants to be around you. So they're rounded. Now look at the picture at the bottom. Even though she's got a big smile, her eyelids went flat. But what else did she do?
Wow. She actually overemphasized the smile.
That and put a barrier in between you and her. All of a sudden the clipboard is up and in front of her, protecting her chest.
It's wild though, because you say that. I almost see that smile down at the bottom. And I'm like, she really likes me.
Yeah. but she's not, because she created that barrier. Right. So what she did is not only did her eyes flatten, but then she put this up here to protect her chest. Because what do we do when we're threatened? We protect where we're dangered, right? So so this is why when she created that barrier and crossed her arms, and even though put on a fake smile, it tells the different story when you learn to look at the eyes.
Wow, this is unreal, man. This took a lot of time for you to learn this stuff, eh?
Yeah, well, yes and no. So that's why I was instantly hooked. Is I wanted something that I could test immediately. And so I learned eyebrows first. And then I went from eyebrows to eyelids and then eye angles and then all these different things. So I learned one at a time. And the real trick to it is I started with my mentor's book. And the book was good, but it was like 140 pages, 4 examples of something per page. And it was too much too fast. So what really helped me were, let me stop presenting here so you can see the rest. Stop sharing. Okay. So if you can see, like, here's an example of upward angle eyes. So what you learn to do is you first learn to recognize the feature, right? And so see how her eyes angle up.
Yep.
Then you read, what does the feature mean? And so optimistic outlook, high expectations, positive attitude. So as you're reading through, what I would do is I'd carry one of these cards with me and I would just go first search for the feature. And then figure out if I was talking to that person, how would I modify my approach? So again, upward angled eyes thinks about the upside of things. And so I need to keep it positive. And if you see somebody whose eyes are really angled up and you come in with a lot of negativity immediately, they just shut down as a person. Why is this important? Because people think differently. So let's use it as an example. Let's say I'm selling you a house, right? And you have the upward angled eyes. Then I'm going to talk about all the features and benefits of the house. If you have downward angled eyes, I'm going to talk about all the improvements that they've made to the house, because when people are buying a house, they sometimes think I'm buying somebody else's problem or headache. Why did they move? So I talk about, they replaced the water heater this recently, they just had the roof replaced, because that person's worried about the downside of things. What could potentially go wrong? So then I'd focus on all the things that have been fixed or repaired. Now, when I used to be part of the presentation team, if I was talking to people whose eyes angled up, I would talk about, this is the best part about our product. We got this feature, this benefits to you. But if their eyes angled down, I would say, this is not the first version of our product. This is actually the 3rd or 4th version, because we had these problems before. This is what we had to fix. And this is the feedback we got from our customers, because people whose eyes angled down think about the potential downside of things.
Wow. That is some wild insights, eh? Okay, so let's take another scenario here and say, and you brought this up a moment ago with the virtual.
Right.
But I'm on a virtual. And the thing is, I'm not in the same room as you right now.
Right.
I don't know what's going on off camera.
Sure.
I don't know what else you got going on in your day. I don't know whatever's happening, but I know that we're here. Right. And if you haven't even got the best etiquette when it comes to being on a camera, it's going to be a lot harder to figure out where your head is at, maybe.
That's actually the complete opposite. That's what the big game changer. So now you're speaking my language. All right.
Okay. So here was the question, and tell me if we're going to the idea was like, how do I know if they're bullshitting me or they're being completely genuine when I'm on a Zoom with somebody where all I can get is kind of that like top half of them?
Well, so this is actually what I love about this is what you do before you ever meet with them. Okay. And you go and find a picture of them on social media.
Oh, see, now you're talking about, I'm going to take you somewhere else in a minute.
So what you do, and this is what I really loved about it, is this was the first proactive skill that I could ever do. So I go to somebody's LinkedIn profile and find the picture of them and say, what features stand out about their head? So this is Steve, who we both know.
Yep.
Right. And let me see if I can make him a little bit larger if it'll, I was afraid to do that. I go look up people on LinkedIn and figure out what does every one of these features tell me? And now I know how do I need to change my message? Because I know what I want to say, but how am I going to speak Steve's language? So have you ever read the book, The 5 Love Languages?
No.
Okay, read it. It talks about the 5 ways that people receive love. So it's acts of service, words of affirmation, physical touch, time and attention, and gift giving. Okay.
I'm just writing it down. Yep.
Sure. It's the same thing, but somebody's face tells you this is how you should talk to me. And that was the big game changer for me. So I'm going to stop sharing this. I'm going to jump back over to the PowerPoint.
Yep.
Because literally this is what was missing in my world. So I mentioned before, the projector, the PowerPoint, and the product, I knew how to make those things fly, but people were always the unknown. So once I figured out how do I look at someone's face and figure out how do I speak their language, that's where it changed for me. And so I literally, there we go. It was like getting a new set of glasses because all of a sudden I could look at the people in the room and instantly figure out how do I speak their language? What am I going to be teaching them? So it was proactive. And then I would go look up somebody on social media. I'd start with LinkedIn because that's who I'm looking for. But then you go to social media because LinkedIn is usually a professional picture. It's probably got Photoshop and the artist may have inverted the images and you wouldn't know it.
Mirroring.
Yes. And so then I go to social media because that's going to be a more recent picture. And again, our faces are constantly changing. So if I'm going to talk to you, I don't go look at your LinkedIn picture from 4 years ago. I go look at your most recent social media picture. So again, here's Steve Sims, so same thing you saw before, rounded forehead, high ears, recessed eyes. So let's just break down Steve real fast. Rounded forehead, outside the box thinker. We know that about Steve. High ears and low eyebrows are people who understand things very fast. So if you don't get to the point with Steve, he gets frustrated, right?
Yeah.
No long-winded answers.
And he'll let you know about it too.
Exactly. Recessed eyes. So he's always watching and evaluating. We talked about that flatter upper lip. So see, I told Steve he needs to trim that because we can't see his lip. Now he does have a flatter upper lip, but when it's blocked by hair, it definitely hides that lip.
Right.
And then right here, chin extension. So if you think about the movie 300, what did they have? They had all the actors grow out those badass beards.
Right.
Because chins are how we take one on the chin and handle adversity. So when people grow that out, they're letting you know I can take on a lot.
Got it.
Yeah. So then you just basically look at it and like we're talking about how could you use this in your world? If you go into a networking event where you can't look up somebody on social media ahead of time, then what you do is you figure out what are your favorite features or what's some that you can remember. So the question you asked me was, how quick can you learn this? I put the 3 eyebrows to work immediately.
Got it. Okay.
And I'm going to explain why that is here in a second. But I could literally walk in, meet somebody. By the time I shook their hand, I can already figure out, okay, their eyebrows say this. We already talked about if you're reading their facial features, you're giving them your time and attention. If you're reading their body language, you're looking away. It's not bad. You need to understand how to read a room, but you can't rely solely on body language. The books I recommend, You Say More Than You Think by Janine Driver and Joe Navarro's What Everybody Is Saying. 2 great books on body language because I'm a huge fan of the skill.
What everybody is saying.
Here's a quick example. If you've ever seen The Voice, here's the judges. And what they do is they listen. And if they like what they hear, then they turn around to see what the artists look like. Well, to me, this is perfect for why they're with that job. Because look, they all have very large ears and smaller eyes. So if you're working with someone, so let's say, give me an example of who you want to talk to. Who are you going to go have a conversation with?
Well, I was actually going to bring this one up. I'm walking up to the front desk of a hotel. I've never met the person behind the desk.
Sure.
I got a reservation already in their system, but I'm hoping that they're going to give me that big, suite upgrade on the top floor.
Right.
I think I'm being totally polite, but my assertive attitude or whatever may not come off that same way. How do I kind of read these people in a way that I can almost walk up and speak their language so that by the time they reciprocate, instead of me asking, they're almost like, sir, we have a room upgrade for you.
Do this all the time. So I'll show you the example on these people, and then we're going to jump right to eyebrows. So we're going to Okay, so if you look here, all the four people in this picture have large ears and small eyes.
How you doing for time?
Oh, I'm fine. You tell me.
Okay, cool. Because we're gonna blow past our normal time limit for our show, and I'm down with that because we're this is great ground. I'm really hoping that everybody tuned in right now is not working out, not jogging, that you do have a pen or pencil in your hand, because there's a lot of amazing things you could be learning right now. And if you listen to the audio, I really encourage you, go back to my Facebook business page, pull up the live stream and watch the video, because Bri is sharing a lot of visuals with us to help us fully understand this and dissect it.
Right. And so this is a perfect example. If they all have large ears and small eyes, now it's in proportion to their face. So when you look at them, do they have large eyes or small eyes? It's not a direct correlation, but you look and say which one's larger. Tends to be what their primary way of taking in information is. So all four of the judges here are auditory first and then visual. Well, you go, yeah, they're musicians. Doesn't that kind of prove the point? But if you are talking to a normal person, so you walk up to the desk and she's got larger ears and she's got smaller eyes, then you make auditory phrases, right? So you could walk up and go, sounds like you've had a hard day. How's everything going? And so because I said sounds like,
right.
Or, you say listen. So you just think of what's an auditory term, what's a visual term, right? Once you got, now here's where I'm really going to mess with your head. So
I'm taking notes as you see me do that, by the way.
So eyebrows is what I teach all the time. That's why I have this PowerPoint on standby.
Yep.
But look what happens if we take away people's eyebrows.
I was just going to say, nobody there has eyebrows.
Yeah. So all I did was Google people without eyebrows. This is who shows up. And look, Nicolas Cage. Do you recognize
I was about to say, is that Nicolas Cage?
It is.
Yeah.
Angelina Jolie. I think she's hot in this picture. She's not.
Yeah.
And that's because we pay more attention than we think to eyebrows, right? So here's another picture of a girl. You just take away the eyebrow and you don't feel like you know who they are. And,
oh my God, what a difference, eh?
Yeah. Eyebrows are just basically tell us how do people take in information. And so I'm going to go right past it, but I want to show you one thing here. Back to what we said earlier, it's part of our everyday language. So if I talk about highbrow humor and lowbrow humor, highbrow humor is you tell me the joke and I have to think about it and then I laugh. Lowbrow humor is Jackass and Three Stooges. So what that means is if you see somebody with high eyebrows, they need time to make a decision. Versus if you see somebody with low eyebrows, they make decisions quickly.
Wow.
Yeah. And you could go and test this, but
I was going to say, like, tell me that, I guess, is like, yeah, the testing part of that. Cause I'm sure there's some people going, so it's like,
I was the biggest one who thought it was bullshit. I don't know if I can cuss on your podcast, but yeah, when I went out there, I thought there's no way in the world. And after using this since 2010 and testing it, I'm amazed at how accurate it is. The one, it's funny. The people who tell you everything that is wrong, flatter upper lip people. So if you see someone like this gentleman here has a flatter upper lip, I don't even bother telling them what I'm doing. And you don't have to. The reason that the company's named Subtle Skills is this is a skill that you can test and see if you get a positive response back. You don't have to tell people that you're analyzing their face.
Yeah.
You don't read a body language book like Janine's book and walk and go, hey, I just read a body language book. So you get to kind of test it in private, but yet you're using it in public, right? So you can go out and just test these things that you're going to learn today. I guarantee you'll be reaching back out and saying, hey, I did this. I've got testimonial after testimonial. But this is going to help you with the airlines and the hotel people. So if you walk up, there's 3 basic eyebrow shapes: straight, angled, and rounded. We kind of talked about them earlier. To give you examples of it, straight eyebrows, get straight to the point. So if you see here, like Jessica Chastain has, right? Straight eyebrows, get straight to the point, facts, figures, data, and stop talking. If you know Brad Lee, you better get to the point quick, right? With Brad. So if they're the ones at the front desk, if I see they have straight eyebrows, I'm already pulling out my ID and my credit card, and I'm just asking 1 or 2 questions and then say, I'd like to get an upgrade if one is available, because they want you to get straight to the point. Okay. Now, angled eyebrow people, help them understand it. Basically What's their angle in it and everything? So then I'd start talking and asking them direct questions. Oh, hey, how's your day? Hey, you think you're going to be able to help me get an upgrade today? Because you're involving them in the process, right? Help them understand it. And then when you involve them and make them part of the solution, that's how you can do it. Now, if you then see, and so for people who aren't watching it, I have an angled eyebrow. What's her name? Ruth Ginsburg has angled eyebrows. What was her whole life about? Understanding the law so she could help women, right? Then the next one is rounded eyebrows. Think about the people around them. So what you do is you talk about you. And let's say you're going to the hotel. Oh, I had such an exhausting flight today. It's just been really a long time. You know, it would be absolutely amazing if I could get an upgrade, right? So what did I do? The first one, I just said, there's an upgrade available. I got straight to the point. The angled eyebrow, I said, man, is there any way you can help me get an upgrade? So then I involved him. The rounded eyebrow, because rounded eyebrow people think about the people around them, I made it about me. Oh, if I could just stretch out, you know, if I could get a nice view, I've never been to this city before, a high floor with a badass room would be amazing. Can you help make that happen? Or I'm sorry, you know, then you just let them decide that they want to help you because they think about the people around them. So who are two people, for the people who are listening, that have rounded eyebrows? Elon Musk. What did he do? He could have retired after PayPal. Instead, he reinvested all his money to help people with Tesla and now with SpaceX. You know, some people have differing opinions on Twitter, but he could just retire, right? And take all of his money and go. And then what do we know about Oprah? We know who she interviews and what she does for her audience. So you literally just start looking at people and like, here's an example. So let's say, since I just taught you, how would you talk to these three if they're working at the desk, right?
She's got the rounded.
Okay.
Are they high or are they low? I'd want to talk about myself almost and make her think about me and maybe some of my struggles.
Exactly.
Guy in the middle, naturally, I'm going straight to the point. He's got the straight eyebrows. I want to just tell him what I need and sort of like stop talking.
Yep.
And the other one, she's trying to figure out, so what's the angle? Right? That's exactly what she's like. So what's in it for me? Is it a what's in it for me, Bri, or is it just what's the angle?
It's the angle. Help me understand so I can help other people. So I got that angled eyebrow when I became a corporate trainer, right? Involve me in the process.
Yeah.
So here's the funny thing. With her, it's a trick question because she has both a straight one and an angled one. And the reason why is there's two sides to our face. Ooh. Like here.
Right now, but if we walk up to her, she may not be doing any type of facial thing. She's just working away. Exactly. We might be able to pick up on it pretty quickly if we kind of catch
100%. Yep.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when you go back, you would treat all three of these people differently in how you would ask for anything or how you would present information to them.
Right.
So again, let's use the example. You said a large part of the audience is realtors, right?
Yep.
Okay. So if you see the rounded eyebrows, I'm not going to ask what her favorite room in the house is. I'm going to say, oh, are you going to be entertaining? Who's going to come visit you? Wait till your friends see you in this new house. Right?
Okay.
If it's him, straight eyebrows, what are you looking for? A 3-3, a 2-2? Are you concerned about interest rate or house payment?
Okay.
And then I'm going to stop and say, what other information do you need? And then with the angled eyebrow, what's your favorite room in the house? How do you plan to use the house? It's that simple.
Got it. Okay, so you would put a post out, and I think we're like, I think the answer's already been pretty clear on this, but I'm gonna pointedly ask it because you had put something out about how to increase closing percentages,
right?
And I was gonna say, how can we leverage this to increase our closing percentage? But I think that it almost goes without saying today is that once you're understanding the people you're speaking with,
yes.
Now you can understand how to speak with them.
Exactly. All you're doing, and here's the example I give. I used to be a horrible traveler because I thought everywhere I go, they should speak English. And if they don't, I'll speak it louder. Yeah, right.
How'd that go?
Exactly. You already know how it worked. But that's what people do is they're so focused on themselves.
That's funny.
That they don't focus on everybody else. So I like to go back here and give you an example. I want to show you my opening slide. I don't want to waste all of our time on slides. Let me see. Where is it? This is the biggest problem that people have. And that is there's a picture up on the screen where the person on the left is focus on them and their message. And when you do that, everybody else focuses out. They zone out because they know you've got commission breath. You're making it about you. But on the picture on the right, when you learn to focus on other people and learn to speak their language, that's when they focus on you. Mm-hmm. Right? So if you give people your time and attention and they feel seen and heard, that builds rapport, and rapport builds relationships. And that's really where a lot of people, and I say this, making that same mistake, I was so busy pushing my product, I wasn't paying attention to the people. And it's the people that buy the products. Products, they say, oh, this product can sell itself. Kind of can't, because you still have a buyer on the other side. And there's a simple story that I like to share. And that is, I went to a wedding at Jekyll Island. It's on the Georgia-Florida line. And once I became a better traveler, everywhere I went in the world, I learned basic phrases. Please, thank you, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, you name it. And so when I'd go to those countries, when I used that, even if I couldn't speak the language, because I tried to speak their language, they tried to speak mine. So beneficial, changed the way I travel. So I was at this wedding, and the guy came over and filled up our wine glass, and I noticed it said that he was Hungarian. I'm like, okay, well, I've been to Prague, Vienna, Budapest, so I know some Hungarians on my phone. So I went and found thank you in Hungarian. When he came back to refill our glasses, I said, Köszönöm. He said, what? I said, Köszönöm. He goes, you speak Hungarian? I said, well, we've been over in that side of the world and just want to say thank you for taking care of us. Because I took 2 seconds to focus on him, guess whose wine glass was never empty the rest of the time?
Yeah, you know what? I see that 1,000,000%. Yeah, I totally get that. And it makes so much sense.
It was my entire table, because we made him feel seen and heard instead of as a servant. And it changed his entire night because we focused on him. For 2 seconds, he took care of us for 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that's how people are wired.
I parallel that, and you'd understand this one as well, very much from the stage when we're on stage. And, you're looking out to an audience and you can see those folks that might be looking down at their phone, people that are distracted, people that may not be completely locked into what you're saying or who you are or what the message is. But then you've got the folks in the audience that are like gazing at you right in the eyes.
Yes.
And they're nodding. And they're almost at the edge of their seat, like leaning forward.
Right.
And that body language right there says, I've learned this and I've studied this in terms of like when I'm live on stage, I try to make eye contact with every single person in that room, at least once, if not more.
Right.
I want you to know that I know you're there.
Yes.
I want to make that connection with you that now you're like, well, he knows I'm in the room. I can't just start looking at my phone. Right. But much the same, because I know you're in the room. And even though I'm speaking to all these people at the same time, we're having an individual conversation with each other.
Yes.
And by doing that, again, it's one of those things that over the years, you just find you're developing a stronger connection with your audience because, like you said, you're acknowledging the fact that they're there.
Yes.
Right. You're speaking their language.
You're speaking their language. You're focusing on them. That's the big game changer is people know when you're pushing your product or when you're focusing on people.
Right.
And, the old term show up and throw up, it happens far too often. And it's out of nervousness. It's we learn from scripts, and scripts are good. We just did a podcast about the importance of scripts, but you have to learn to speak the person's language. And so that's a perfect example. Janine Driver, a friend of mine, she's very auditory. And so if I send her a regular text message, she won't respond. If I send her a voice text or a video, she'll call me back immediately.
Got it.
If I call her, FaceTime is best because she can hear me and see me. So you start playing with these things to figure out who your customers are. What's the best way to communicate with them? And that's the whole thing is we're not being so narcissistic that it has to be done our way. Let me rephrase that. They're not so narcissistic that it has to be done my way. Right. Instead, I want to focus on them because I know what I'm talking about. Now I'm speaking their language, and that becomes our way.
Okay. I see where the correction that you drew. Yeah. I totally get that. Right. So now let's go back as I said, I'm going to take, I want to go there. You had brought up social media. We talked about the photo. Sure. We talked about, and oftentimes if we're going to go meet somebody and we know who we're meeting, we can look them up. But the person, behind the front desk or the stewardess on the plane, you never know. So that's about reading in the moment.
Right.
Going back though and thinking, I own a business. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a salesperson. I have an Instagram, a Facebook, a LinkedIn, or whatever.
Right.
What should everybody, again, tuned in right now, when it comes to now understanding, what we've spent some time teaching today, when they think about their photos and or their videos that they're posting up to social media, is there anything specific that we can share for people to know about before they make their next post? Like, watch out for this, or don't do that, or just best practice kind of stuff?
Well, combination of things. One, look to where the camera is, right? That's a big deal. Like we talked about earlier, if I did the rest of the conversation like this, you think I'm not paying attention to you.
Or it's like the people that when they're doing the selfie, they're looking at themselves on the screen rather than the little lens on the camera.
Yes, exactly. Right. So that's the first one. The other one is you don't know who's going to be listening to your message. So you need to add in 3 different components. You need a auditory term, visual terms, and kinesthetic terms, because you don't know how somebody else learns. So there's 3 modalities to how people learn things. Are they audio learners, visual learners, or kinesthetic learners? So let's say that they're kinesthetic.
How do you know?
You don't, because remember, you're making a video for your audience. So you have to pepper it with everything.
Okay.
So what you can say is, today we're going to take a look at and then, what it sounds like, or if you listen to this, so then you make auditory terms, and then you say, is this something you can wrap your hand around? Are you guys ready to get moving? Then that's kinesthetic. So in your calls to action, or as you're describing your actions in your videos, have visual terms, auditory terms, and kinesthetic terms.
Wow.
And I do that.
So should I be overly concerned then with the sun was in my eyes and I was squinting, and oh my God, that might make me seem like this when I'm really like that?
No, because they'll know if they see the light reflecting on you, right? So like I can do the same thing right now. Let me turn up my lights way too high.
And that's why my glasses are off.
Yeah. So if I turn them up this high, people know I'm outside, right? Versus when I tone it down, they'll get it. But when people are reading, first off, the number one tip that took me the longest time, and I thank Ryan Magin for this. If you don't know who he is, it's Ryan Magin. That guy is a genius when it comes to videos. Okay. So he helps people get millions of views on TikTok, YouTube, you name it. We've become random run-in friends because I run into that guy everywhere. I just saw him in Vegas last week. I live in Texas. He lives in Florida. I bumped into him in Miami, a city he doesn't live in. I bumped into him at DFW Airport in an Admirals Club.
Come on.
Supposed to be in. And so I'm like, well, there's a reason we're supposed to keep running into each other. But so what he talks about is the importance of subtitles. If you don't have subtitles in your videos, you are losing out, because 75% of videos are watched on with no sound. So if you don't have subtitles, you're in a losing position against people who do.
Okay. So subtitles are a must for video.
Absolutely. And so then you add in auditory, visual, and kinesthetic words while you're talking, and then they'll see them in the subtitles.
What about if I'm at home and, it's like one of those days where I'm just in the doghouse with my wife and I have no idea why?
Uh-huh.
Is there anything I can do here to leverage this stuff to understand what's going on? Or
you would have to understand what her face says about her. So,
she's
if you send me a picture,
I don't know why.
When we go offline, send me a picture and I can tell you what works. But I'll give people some generic tips, right?
Cool. Yeah.
If they have a wide area below the nose and above the lip, those are physical touch people. So a wide area like this, right? Those are physical touch people. So walk up and touch her, right? It can be on the shoulder, give her a hug. If it's a line that's right here, that's verbal affirmation. So that is below the lip and above the chin. There's a horizontal line here. That's a verbal affirmation person. So that's somebody who's driven.
Is that a crease, or is that just like the lip is kind of overhanging?
No, it's a crease that you'll see.
Okay.
You'll literally see the crease.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see if I can find an example of that to pop up on your screen for people to see. But yeah, if you see that on anybody, then they want verbal affirmation for the jobs that they do. Let me see if I can find someone who has it.
And I mean, obviously the sort of higher level of the question is, it's like, we've talked about business today. We've talked about being able to leverage this information so that I can get myself a better seat, a better room, a better whatever.
Right.
And now I'm just taking it on the personal level and going, now you've got somebody that, in my case, let's just say, and I just use it as an example, but my wife, who I've known forever,
Right.
How can we leverage this type of stuff or even at home for people that we actually do know versus don't know? And we've probably got some predetermined notions just about how they handle situations or we handle them together.
Yeah. So it's like you're leading me into my slides, because that's a question that people ask is, where can I use it? Answers everywhere.
Yeah.
Because
that's what it seems like.
Yeah. Everybody has a face. So why do I teach it for sales first? Because usually sales driven people, right, who are trying to grow their business, they have the strongest need for connection and rapport building skills. And so they invest in that. During the pandemic, I created a course on dating called, if you go to lookingforloveandallthewrongfaces.com, I created that because I got so tired of people reaching out to me during the pandemics who got into online dating, say, what can you tell me about this person? What can you tell me about that person?
Which makes sense, right? Like, yeah.
Because, and it's not that there's a feature that's right or wrong, but we talked earlier about, let's say that I have a straight eyebrow and I'm talking to somebody who has a rounded eyebrow, or even better, let's say I have a straight low eyebrow. So lowbrow humor, right? Jackass or Three Stooges, I immediately laugh. That means that the lower the eyebrow are people who take action immediately. And let's say it's straight. So hurry up and get straight to the point. And then the rounded person has a high eyebrow. Well, they're going to take longer to make a decision. And they're going to think about the people around them first and themselves second. So it's just little differences we have. But I'll give you one as a personal example. I don't have a lot of upper eyelid, so I'm fine doing things by myself. Now, I dated someone who had a very full upper eyelid, and they wanted to do everything together all the time. And so I needed time by myself.
Is that an opposite fact, or is that that's like a teardown factor?
I know, it's just they enjoy doing things with other people. So a rhyme, I like to make things rhyme so that people can remember it. And that is, the more lid you see, the more we think in terms of we. So when you see somebody with a fuller upper eyelid, it's, hey, what are we doing? Where are we going to go? They want to do things together. So if you're ever in a relationship and you have, let's say that I'm the one with the fuller eyelid and I meet someone who has no upper eyelid, then I have to explain to them, I like to do a lot of things together, but I also have to realize that if they have a thinner upper eyelid, they like to do things alone. So it's not a slighting me or a slam on me. If they want to do things alone, that's how they're wired versus how I'm wired. So the real goal of learning to decode facial features is to gain an understanding of other people, not a judgment.
Say that part again. I think that was an important line right there.
Yeah. This skill is about learning to understand other people, not to judge other people, because there is no right or wrong facial feature. It's just, how do they think? How do I think? And how do we interact together?
This is powerful stuff. I just, again, this seriously, this ties right back to the learning we talked about off the top today around taking time to improve ourselves, to study, to understand more about how to better communicate with other people and then leverage that in both business and personal life.
Right.
So I saw,
sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that up right there.
Yeah. So Dave LaPointe asked about the two books. The difference between these two books are, the yellow one, You Say More Than You Think by Janine Driver, is what does my body language say about me when I'm talking to other people? Mm-hmm. And Joe Navarro's book, What Everybody Is Saying, is how to read other people's body language.
Oh, wow. So that's both of those combined should give you a ton of ammo.
Yes. And like I said, I'm a product of the product. If you can look at how used this book is by Janine's, I mean, I've got pages and notes and everything in it. It's a great book.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's the difference between the two. Is the yellow one is, what are you saying when you walk into a room? And then the other one is, how do I read a room when I'm in it?
This is awesome stuff, Bri. This is I mean, it's the type of stuff that it's almost like you start, and I get it from you now, right? You start to master this stuff and it becomes one of those things that you can, like you said, you can use anywhere, and you can go and you can understand better. And it's not about judging. It's very much about understanding who it is you're speaking to. And again, in a business world and trying to grow, we talk about, be the chameleon. Right. Don't bullshit, but be the chameleon. Understand how to change your colors a little bit. Understand that you cannot be just streamlined your way or the highway, but it's got to be a collective with people.
And people have a bad opinion when you say be a chameleon. They're going to say, oh, you're being inauthentic. And that's not true. What you're trying to find is, what do we have in common? And again, using the travel example, if I go to another country, I'm going to learn to speak their language because it's going to help and benefit me to reach a mutual goal. If I'm over in Spain and I need to know where the bathroom is, it behooves me to learn to ask "Donde el baño" in Spanish, right? So then people get this confused all the time. They think influence and persuasion is a bad thing. Not at all. It's about learning to speak a common language.
I like that. Mm-hmm. So just before we wrap, and I know we got the QR code we want to show everybody.
Right.
One of the questions I like to ask at the end of the show all the time is, and done this probably a couple hundred times in terms of, because some of these episodes have been solo, but the idea there is for folks that are out there that are, doing good things and are in the right mindsets and have achieved a level of success, which again, I see that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to know, how do you know that it's been a successful day for you at the end of your day?
Sure. There's a few ways. Have you ever read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl?
No, but I know the author name.
Sure. Read it. He lived through the Holocaust. He went through it, but because he was a doctor, he also got to visit other patients. And what he learned about that is the people who learn to focus on other people and not just themselves are the ones who survive the inhumane conditions of the concentration camp. And so a good way to tell if it's been a good day, have you impacted anybody's life in a positive way? And when you do that, when we help others, we help ourselves. That's one good way. And another way is, if you just go to bed feeling different, like you made that 1% progress, that's another good way. But I'm a bigger fan of, did you help anyone else in any form or fashion, in any particular way? And that kind of leads me into, I kind of like the way you set up these questions. People ask, where can you practice this? Servers everywhere. Your barista, like we talked about, go to the hotel gate agent, the hotel desk agent, go at the airport. I get upgraded to first class often. Because I talk to the person at the gate that everybody else yells at, like they control the weather in the plane. When you treat people nice, you just get things out of it. And if you don't, you made their life better because everybody else ignored them. I mean, look at the term server is servant, right?
Yep.
When you stop and focus on who other people ignore and avoid, you change their life. If you want to tip them, great. That's just a bonus. But if you take a second to make them feel seen and heard, it makes a huge difference. So I always ask my servers, like, hey, what's your name? I try to refer to it when I'm there. And then this is really fun. When I was learning this, I carried the flashcards with me, right?
Yeah.
And I would go and I would say, okay, this is what I see. This is what I, based on your facial feature. And I started off and I go, hey, look, took this class. I kind of think this is BS, but I would love to test it on you. If you have time in between tables and you're a good sport, come on back. What happened is all of a sudden they would grab another person, then they grab another person, then they grab another person. Next thing you know, I get free food and drink when I go back there because they want to know about themselves. So,
I want to thank you for keeping my batting average at 1,000. You have no idea what that means, but I'll explain it to you. And I know my listeners do, and I want everybody that's tuned in again to just see, I told you. Brian, I asked that question at the end of like almost every episode that I've got a guest on. And, again, super successful people have done some great things, some creative people, some people that are trying to get to that next level. Nobody has ever answered that question with how much money they made.
Oh, no.
It usually boils right back down to that 4-letter word of like, was I able to help somebody, or was I able to put a smile on somebody's face? And, that for me, again, when we talk about the learning and how much I get to learn just from you and from the folks that I'm so, lucky to be able to interview on the show, is you get to pick these things up. And then at the end of it all, when you go, how do you know it's been successful? And then like repetitively, I helped somebody else. I made somebody smile. It's about others, just to what you just said. It's about others. Like you can't tell me, not you, but like nobody can tell you otherwise at this point.
Right.
Because everybody that is doing something good recognizes what success really means.
Absolutely.
So I thought that was a very cool one. Final words that you can share with anybody to help them get out there, build a lot more mind share, really grow themselves personally, grow themselves professionally. I know that we've got this QR code that I just throw up on the screen here for everybody. And so again, those of you tuned in, I do recommend go back to the live stream on this, or even Bri, if you've got a link that you want to send people to,
if people
where
just
can they find you, all the above.
Yeah. So you can go to either, probably the simplest one is Subtle Skills, SUBTLE skills, or an easy way to remember it is learntoreadfaces.com will redirect you to my website. And then you can get the cheat sheet. So you don't have to have the QR code that's here. But really, if you're listening to this, if you want to understand everything we talked about, you need to see the visuals that we covered on the people to really get this skill.
Did we get this right? Subtleskills.com right here?
Yep. That's perfect.
Perfect. Yeah. So that's up there.
And the other thing is, this is a tool. You can't see over here, but I have a lot of Batman stuff. As a matter of fact, somebody gave me a Batarang for my birthday this year.
No way.
Oh, yeah. I'll grab it. Because they know I'm a huge Batman fan.
That's cool, man.
So I haven't used it yet, but the whole point of why I liked Batman is, it's a funny question that everybody asks now, like, what's your superpower? And what I liked about the Batman thing is it was a learned skill, not a given skill. Now, of course, it helped that he was a billionaire, but the thing is, if you want to learn something, or go take a class, like, you don't believe my stuff, go pick up the books on body language I mentioned earlier. If you want to learn this, take the course, buy the flashcards, watch me on Instagram and learn tips as you go. A great one I'm reading right now. Now, this one will go deep down the rabbit hole. Is if you want to understand statement analysis, then you can get this book called Mind Reader by David Lieberman. And that's about how people use their words to tell you how they think or feel at the time. And so I study everything about people. Now, it doesn't mean you have to study those same things, but if you're curious about something, give it a try. And then you go, hey, this goes in my utility bill, or I just discard it and move on to something else. But that's the whole key, is never stop learning, because that's what life is about.
Powerful, my man. Very powerful. I thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the time today. It's been fun. The time flew by and we talked for an hour and a half.
Time literally flew by. And I got to tell you, and this is not a knock on any of my previous guests, but usually we do, just for our listeners' sake, from, how long is a podcast episode that people will actually tune into. We usually, as I sort of mentioned off the top, go 45 to 60.
Right.
This is such a different realm of conversation that I've ever had. Outside of having it with you in person, which was what was completely intriguing to me.
Yes.
I really felt that this was, just such a different skill, communication skill. And when we look at what we're all doing and trying to grow personally and professionally, we need people. We need other people, and understanding how to work with other people and communicate with other people is, at the forefront of where your next step in life will be.
100%.
And so this was just awesome stuff. And I thank you once again for making the time to join us today.
Oh, thank you. Have me back anytime.
You bet, man. We will.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be right back. You're either listening to this on one of your favorite podcast platforms, or maybe you went to my website, mindshare101.com. And while you're there, be sure to download your free copy of the Ultimate Marketing Bundle, our 31-page ebook, including your free 90-day social media content counter to help you build more mindshare so that you get more market share. A reminder as well that if you want to talk about personalized one-to-one coaching, an in-person keynote talk for your upcoming event, and or ongoing virtual training, just get in touch with me. We'll set up a consultation call, learn more about what you're looking to achieve, and how we will help you do just that. Also, make sure to get registered for our small group mastermind taking place on May 29th and 30th in Toronto. This is going to be 2 powerful days of collaboration, networking, and problem solving. Don't forget to leave a review of this podcast at www.ratethispodcast.com/mindshare101. Connect with me on Facebook at mindshare101 and on Instagram at David Greenspan 101. I want to thank Kids Keep in Touch Systems and REM Magazine for sponsoring the Mindshare podcast. Be sure to visit our site to learn more about what these powerful companies will do to help you grow your business. This has been another episode of the Mindshare podcast. Thank you for tuning in.